Greetings and welcome to the latest edition of the Entheogenic Evolution Podcast. As always, I'm your host Martin, and I'm happy to have you with me today. For this week's episode, we are joined by Magda from way over there and up there in Canada. She is someone who facilitates 5-MeO-DMT experiences up there and also works with Daniel Schmidt at the Samadhi Center. And we're going to be talking all about her own personal history and entry into medicine work, as well as what she does there at the Samadhi Center and working with meditation and iboga, and then topping it off with 5-MeO-DMT. It's a very interesting conversation, and I hope that you will enjoy it. We'll get to it in just a couple minutes. But first, of course, some announcements. As usual, when I receive a donation, I like to thank that person. And so this week, thanks goes out to Brooke, who every month makes a small monthly donation via PayPal. It's all set up automatically for Brooke, and so it just comes right on through. And so thank you very much, Brooke, for your long-standing support of the podcast. If you would like to support this podcast, as I always like to remind you, it's quite easy. Just stop by my personal webpage at martinball.net, and you can use the PayPal link at the top right of the page, or join up as a member over at Patreon and choose the monthly support level that best fits you and your level of support and interest and financial means, of course. Just to let you know about what's going to be coming up here on the podcast, we've got lots of exciting stuff. I already have an interview in the bank with Daniel Carcillo, and he is the CEO of Wasana Health. We spoke the other week, and so I've got that interview, and it's all ready to go for you coming up on the podcast. And coming up very shortly, actually just a couple days, I'm going to be speaking with Rak Razam and interviewing him about facilitating 5-MeO-DMT, because we're going to use that interview as part of the Facilitating 5-MeO-DMT anthology book that I'm currently working on. And then coming up after that, we're going to be doing the same thing with Susie Calypso, who runs the Temple of Eden down in Southern California, which is a 5-MeO-DMT church. And I'll be interviewing Susie about what goes on there at the temple and her own background and experience with 5-MeO-DMT, and that will also be transcribed and made part of the book, which, just to let you know, is going extremely well. I'm still collecting some submissions, but I already have quite a few of them, and I've been editing them and formatting them and putting them all together into a book. And over the past week, I've been writing an introduction to it, and I'm really excited about this project. And going to be making some new art to go with the book and designing the book cover and, doing all that stuff. So it's still a ways out before the book is going to be available. But just to let you know, it's taking shape very nicely. So really excited about that. And so keeping me busy, which is always fun. And of course, speaking of 5-MeO-DMT or any other psychedelics out there, if you or someone you know needs some help reflecting on their experience, integrating their experience, or even preparing for, I, of course, am available for 30, 60, and 90-minute video call consultations. You can go over to nondualentheogenicintegration.com if you want more details over there. But it's always a pleasure to speak with people from around the world about their experiences and help them sort through just what's going on. Anyway, let's go ahead and jump into this conversation with Magda. This was actually take 2 on our interview. We recorded it once, and there were some things that she wasn't quite comfortable with from that first interview and wasn't quite happy with. So we went ahead and we redid the interview, and here's the result. Hope you enjoy, and hope you're doing well wherever you are, whatever's going on in your life. Hope you're doing well. Okay, let's give it a listen. Well, welcoming on to the Entheogenic Evolution Podcast today, Magda. And this is actually our second take on our interview. So we're going to kind of redo our conversation that we had before and maybe get into some new territory. Who knows? But the whole inspiration for having Magda on the show is not only is she a fascinating, wonderful, lovely woman, but part of the inspiration was that Magda works at the Samadhi Center with Daniel Schmidt, who was formerly interviewed on the podcast. And Magda is the one who serves people 5-MeO-DMT at the end of their, 7-day, 9-day
10
meditation.
days.
10, oh, I'm off. 10-day meditation with microdosing of iboga and then topping it all off with some 5-MeO. And also, the inspiration for having Magda on the show is that she is one of the collaborators who is part of this anthology book project that I'm currently working on facilitating 5-MeO DMT. So she's one of the people who has submitted material for me. And the thought of having her on the show and getting the book started is what really inspired having Magda on. So Magda, welcome and welcome back.
Oh, thank you, and thank you again. It's a great pleasure to be here, and great opportunity to talk with you about 5-MeO DMT. And you are so kind and interested in humans' journey. That took me a little bit by surprise last time.
Mm.
And we ventured into territory that I was not really prepared to open up and talk. But I am now. So let's have beginner's mind. And there is this saying, or I read somewhere, that a child will walk the same path every day, let's say to school or kindergarten, and they will see a flower on the road. And each day they will stop and admire this flower. It's like they've seen it for the very first time. So we will kind of redo our conversation too, and be as authentic as possible to have the full experience of what I do, perhaps.
Yeah, well, I really appreciate the opportunity. And, it's interesting having these kinds of conversations because I always am really interested in people's personal lives and personal story because we are all these unique, beautiful individuals who have experienced joy and tragedy and suffering and success. And we're all a mix of these things. And it's it's an area where I've always been very open in my own life. I've always been very, I like to think of myself as sort of an open book that I present my life to my audience and I don't hold back. And sometimes that gets me in trouble and sometimes, it doesn't. But it's been my approach. And so in inviting people onto the podcast and when I want to dig into people's lives, that sometimes it gets into, sensitive personal areas because we are these complex beings. And so that's kind of what we got into last time. And I know that it was a little bit of a surprise and uncomfortable for you. And, I sometimes I don't necessarily want to apologize for making people uncomfortable because, I'm just being myself and doing my thing. But I also do want my guests to feel comfortable. And
I would not accept apologies because they're absolutely unnecessary. My life is the way it is, and healing is my most for priority in life. So having that opportunity to see something that I was not aware to this extent within myself gave me nothing but opportunity to heal deeper. So thank you so very much for all your questions, all your curiosity. It paid really, really well in my case.
Well, beautiful, beautiful. So, yeah, so let's kind of do the redo. And so kind of I think where we started was I was just sort of asking you about your own personal background, your own life. And I mean, we can even just start with Magda. Where does, obviously it's not a typical Anglo-Saxon name. You obviously speak with a little bit of an accent. So maybe let's just start with where do you come from in the world originally? And you're in Canada now, but this is not where you originally come from. So maybe we can back up earlier into your life.
That's correct. Thank you. So I always say two things I probably will never change. One thing for sure, and the other one, with a lot of work I may. So the shape of my head is Eastern European. I call it egg shape. That's a give and take away. It's like, yes, I am. And the second one is my accent. So yes, no matter how many years I speak English, and I feel much more fluent in English than in Polish. I am from Poland. Um, Yet there are days I do not speak English at all. So yes, I came to Canada many, many years ago, over 30 years ago, very young, very fresh, with quite a bit of personal instability. So I was, I believe, 18 or 19 when I crossed the big pond by myself. I had sister already here. So it was easier landing than being just alone. Mm-hmm. Yet I spoke German, Russian, and Polish, but no English. So that was quite literally a big obstacle. And my stay in Canada was granted by someone. Actually, I had to go to consulate in New York City, and I was giving very straightforward ultimatum. I will see you in 9 months if you don't speak English and don't converse with me clearly, you're not staying. So I had no choice but to learn English very quickly. So I did. But we were talking last time a little bit about the troubles that Magda was experiencing, and these were mental issues, and these are not easy for me to share and talk about. And I thought coming out, so to speak, in my submission, my book submission, was very brave. But I am ready to speak about it because there's beauty also in overcoming mental instabilities, especially suicidal depression that I experienced since I was 5 years old. I remember very vividly looking for means to end my life at 5. And and it wasn't all my life so strong and so dramatic. I had good times. I had better days, but it was always lurking on the somewhere inside of me, that feeling of not being complete or feeling of being terribly lonely, not a good person, and so on and so forth. And that suicidal thoughts were always lingering around. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And was there a cause that you can identify for that? I mean, 5 years old, that's so young to be developing those kinds of thoughts. Was that related to your living situation, or was it just part of you was kind of digging away at sort of this darkness?
Well, I was born in a very, very particular environment. At that time, we were Jehovah's Witness in terms of religion, and very much submitted to the truth of that religion. Also, I'll be very forthcoming right now with sharing something, not necessarily fully by name, but my father embodied a very particular archetype to come here and experience a life of that, which I will perhaps simply call the Lord of the Darkness. So everything was based on Old Testament, and then venturing a little bit into the New Testament, great fear of God, of love, of anything that is new. So darkness was pretty much everywhere that I could look and reach. And family unit is so important in young person's development that we don't look to teachers, we don't look to neighbors, we look up to our parents, no matter how difficult it is. And also in child's understanding, there was nothing really difficult. It was the life that we were living until later on. I realized that no, this is completely hell created by the master. Oh. So that was one part of the suicidal ideation when it came from, and the other one, I lived in many different dimensions, so to speak, when I was a child. I remembered a lot before being incarnated. I remembered who I was. And comparing myself to who I was and who I am now as human being didn't compute at all. I wanted to go back. Another part to this whole story was my connection to extraterrestrial family, that I remember being part of them. and they would visit me, and we had great time together in a language that is non-spoken, not human, is vibrational, is it's a beautiful language of telepathy and music, I would even say. And when I was about 6, they told me they won't be coming anymore. I need to start my human life. And I just turned around and looked for help. Who do I call for help? And there was literally nobody that my heart would long for and say, this person is the one who will keep me safe. So this basically what happened to Magda when she was very young. So no wonder there were some terrible, terrible thoughts crossing my mind.
Yeah, and I'm just imagining if I'm gonna guess that probably you didn't share a lot of this with your parents because none of that fits within Jehovah's Witness. I mean, and I'm even surprised to hear that your family was Jehovah's Witness in Poland. I didn't realize that actually this religion had made inroads there. I mean, it's a very American form of
Yes.
Christianity. But yeah, sort of you're this young, sort of interdimensional being living this very rich life that is not the very narrow view of Jehovah's Witness, and then being in a sense sort of abandoned, sort of that the child growing up and no longer having that connection. I'm reminded of something that happened to myself when I don't even know how young I was, but it was pretty early on where I had several different quote unquote imaginary friends as a child. And something kind of similar happened to me where I had this friend that was a dragon. I mean, this happened so long ago that I can't tell you any details about what this friend was like, other than that there was one morning where I woke up and I was just in tears because I knew that the dragon was gone. And my dad comes into my room and he's like, Martin, what's wrong? And he's like, oh, my dragon's gone. And I'm just bawling. I mean, I was just devastated because this was a companion to me. And I knew it was no longer a part of my life. I mean, I just woke up with that realization. And my dad went and found like a little dragon toy somewhere else in the house and brought it back. He's like, no, here's your dragon. I was like, that's not it, Dad. And I never explained it to him. But in sort of a minor way, I think that it's kind of similar to what you're describing, of that feeling of companionship and connection that suddenly is gone, and now you're being forced to know you've got to be this girl in this household in this life, and you didn't fit.
I not only that I didn't fit, I didn't want to fit.
Yeah.
And that was the turning point, I think, where the human structure and conditioning really started taking place, where the formation, the shape of the mind started to really become solid, and forgetting all the beautiful things. To a certain degree, I always knew what I knew. I held it in my heart, but the major things, the most beautiful things, started to fade away. Like I had a dream, and I remember just about 7 years ago flying somewhere, and it was so beautiful. Actually, that was the year that Star Wars 7 came out. And we watching this movie on a flight. Great, fantastic. I love Star Wars. So, and we are right above the ground. We are part of the movie. Yeah. Great. And there is this scene, this woman who was taking care of Luke's saber and the chest that the saber was in, and a few other items. I don't know if you remember this very short woman with the big, big glasses that you see her pupils as if that was the whole eye.
Maz.
Okay, so at one, you remember that. Yeah. So imagine she takes the glasses off at one point, and I froze because I looked at the face of my mother. This was Just absolutely stunning experience. And obviously the movie went on, but I kept being frozen in that space and starting to remembering those little people that used to come to see me and calling them parents and calling them siblings. And everything came alive to me again.
Wow. So that must have been quite a transition then from age 6 to when this event occurred. And did that coincide with a big life change for you, or what happened at that point? It's so interesting.
Well, you see, in the last 20 years, I've been digging really deep
Mm,
with the help of a teacher, a shamanic teacher. Amazing person who helped me overcome psychosis and suicidal depression in some way, some form. So my life for the last 20 years is a big excavation of everything inside, to the point that I was able to look at pieces and items that normally I would not be able to. Mm-hmm. So there was nothing particular as one event. It's a whole journey of last 20 years.
yeah. So at age 18, you decided to move to Canada, and you said your sister was already there. Was that an act of getting away from the situation that you were in at home, or was that just, I want to go join my sister?
A very good question. So actually, I left my family home when I was 14, and I was on my own since I was 14. So moving to Canada was just another move, and I was very fine with this. Mind you, in Poland was still very much communist regime, although the solidarity movement was happening, and who knew at that point we didn't know which way it will go. So
Mm,
I just packed everything I had, which was one little suitcase, and moved all the way to Canada. And that was it, starting something new. But it was just like moving to another city, really, with the exception that I did not speak the language the people spoke.
yeah, yeah. So you described that you went on sort of a 20-year journey to excavate and go through your own process of healing from depression, from suicidal thoughts. Um, what what was it that brought you to the point of pursuing healing? You know, that's such a big point for so many people that many people don't get there, right? And then you did, and then how did that unfold for you? You know, whatever you're comfortable sharing.
Hmm. A very complex question. Well, looking back, suicidal was not on my radar, actually. It was never planned for me to commit suicide. So I'm thinking about my life as a stories and events that Magda needed to go through to understand herself, to understand life, to arrive later on in life at a place of compassion for humanity and mostly for herself. I went through, and I shared that with you the previous time, through 2 years of very deep and walking on the edge of suicide, 2 years of walking on the edge of suicide, and that would not happen. And at that point, I just gave up. I gave up being suicidal, and I said, God, guide me. I don't know what to do anymore. And that actually changed my life. Maybe it was to live pain and suffering to the point where I simply had enough.
Mm, mm. Wow. Well, that's powerful. I'm wondering, how did the background in Jehovah's Witness, did is that something that you ever identified with, or in going, you know, like you said, you asked God for help. Um, was that coming from the place of Jehovah's Witness, or was that never, did that never fit you? I'm just curious, because obviously you're not Jehovah's Witness now. Um,
No, I'm
so
not.
Yeah, I'm just curious about how that did or did not play into, or just was it not even part of your
So,
process?
mhm. So my father was really a seeker of God. He spent literally his whole life seeking God and feeling that separation that he had to feel, embodying that very particular archetype that he
Mm-hmm.
did. And it was, I could write a book about the beauty now that I look back from much healed place. I could write a book about true human suffering and human hope and searching for God, for meaning. Um, it was absolutely incredible now from my place today to observe this. So we were Jehovah's Witness for some time. Magda was a little revolutionary herself. So
Mm.
at the age of 12, I told my father that I'm going to church and he can think whatever he wants. And actually, I gave him 2 weeks notice, and that's exactly how I put it. And he took it seriously. 2 weeks later, he comes and says, "Okay, we all go to church," and that's how we started being Catholics. Uh, and again, in his mind, it was a search for God, search
Mm.
for freedom, search for community, and all those wonderful things. And really, honestly, what Magda wanted is friendship. There were kids I was not allowed to play with children at
Mm.
school. And you're absolutely right. Jehovah Witness was like maybe 0.5 or maybe 1% of all population in Poland. But I never identified myself with any religion. To me, there was God. There was something greater than I am. I had mystical experiences since I was a child, and this was my norm. So calling someone God outside, it just did not fit the bill, even when I was very, very young. I remember when I was 11 or 12 years old, for some reason, a book by Krishnamurti landed, translated in Polish, landed in my family home, and my eyes just went big because this was the only different book than Bible on all the pamphlets that we used to have for
Mm.
Jehovah's Witnesses and all those things. And I got so excited, but to read this book, I needed to get up at around 5 a.m. So my parents were asleep because this was forbidden book. So I read in secret that nobody could really find out. And I don't know how much I got out of this book at age 11 or 12, but it definitely somehow changed the trajectory of my life, perhaps only into looking that there is more than Jehovah Witness, there is more than Bible, Christian Bible, and so on and so forth.
Yeah. Well, what a stark contrast. I can only imagine what that must have been like for you. I mean, I guess if I were to sum up Jehovah's Witness sort of doctrine, I guess it might be that God is coming, so be strict and behave. And then you're reading like Krishnamurti, which is basically God is within, so be love. You know, I mean, what a different message to then be receiving, and then even that transition into Catholicism about sort of opening up the community. I mean, the Jehovah's Witness community is just, it's so strict. And like you say, you can't play, you can't celebrate holidays, you can't participate in a lot of cultural activities. And so that
No
maybe,
birthdays.
yeah,
Mm-hmm.
yeah,
Yeah.
just such a strict way of interpreting. And for me, I mean, it just feels very isolating from God, that
Yeah.
sort of approach. So I could see how Krishnamurti would be like potential like water in the desert.
Definitely. Sunshine. Yes.
Yeah. So then, in pursuing your own healing, I imagine that it kind of opened up again back into your own sense of spirituality, your own sense of sort of living as a multidimensional person in striving for balance and health within that. You know, things that your family would have considered, well, it's just odd. She talks to aliens. She has mystical experiences. I mean, that's the kind of thing like for Jehovah's Witnesses might be like, okay, devil's in here. So how did you reclaim that for yourself?
How do I reclaim who I am?
Yes, yes.
Yes. Huh, interesting. I was treated a little bit like a golden child in childhood. I could find water with the dowsing instruments, and people would call me a healer when I was just 5, 6 years old, and trying to get my hands over their heads, let's say, and heal their migraines and such. So there was I was growing. I realized with quite arrogance about who Magda is and my own abilities. This was instilled in me since I was literally a child. So there were certain expectations of myself to also perform, to be different, to right, and that just was not healthy at all. As I mentioned to you, I have a very strict teacher, and she brought me back to earth and into right humbleness. And I call it right humbleness because in Jehovah's Witness, we were also very humbled as the one nation that is chosen by God. Oh, we are so humble. We thank you so much. Everyone else is going to hell, but we are being saved, right? Yeah. But so there are so many different meanings of humbleness. But so it was a journey for me to learn how to really be and lose my spiritual ego that was very much inflated. So that was part of the question, and I lost the other part.
Yeah, so the sense of reclaiming yourself as who you are. But as you say, with sort of right humbleness, I mean, there's self-inflationary humbleness, there's self-righteous humbleness. We see that a lot in religions, like we're right and we're so humble and everybody else is wrong. We're the chosen ones. This is the only way, and we're so humble about it that, I mean, it's the kind of thing that really turns me off. It just gets me going just thinking about it. But versus, there's from the non-dual position, and this is something we talked about last time, is this idea of, look, we're all God. Yeah. And it's both empowering, but it's also humbling, because we all are. I mean, there's no one who is the one. There's no one that's that special one, because we all are this same being in consciousness interacting with itself. And so there's both a humility to that there, and then there's also an empowerment that's there, that we could say, oh, well, I am that. I am not separate. And so in reclaiming, like for me, that was an important part of my process of accepting that reality of myself and kind of butting up against my own sense of what it meant to be humble or what it meant to be arrogant, versus what does it mean to just kind of radically speak truth and be able to stand in that. So in reclaiming yourself and going through your own healing process, that I'm losing my words in the moment, but in terms of how you emerged out of the depression, emerged out of the darkness into a more whole and healthy person.
Beautiful question. We going into the journey into the realm of 5-MeO-DMT with this question, obviously, but I want to mention to you, sometimes as we go through healing, we really don't realize the changes until we look back and said, oh, last year I did this and that affected me this way and that way. And I am not feeling it this way right now. I'm not affected. So we kind of have to look back. So I remember actually this year, my daughter, who knows my story pretty intimately, asked me, Mom, how did you let go of your past? How did you shed your childhood stories? And I looked at her as if she asked me something in different language. And I had to really compute it in my head. And I said, did I really do that? And then I realized, yes, I can talk about my past. I can express myself to a certain degree. Those stories don't affect me. Those stories don't live inside of me. However, What really changed my life and what got me out of the suicidal depression that lasted until I was 50 years old was one instance with 5-MeO-DMT where I put everything on one. There's expression that I'm missing right now, on one basket, or I put everything in one basket.
Yeah,
Okay,
you put all your eggs in one basket, or you did
that's it.
a Hail Mary.
Okay, all right. I don't know the Hail Mary, so we stick with the basket.
Okay.
All right. And I was, at that point, I was extremely desperate. This was, again, I could feel the heaviness, the heavy weight coming back. And the ideation was just living in me profoundly. And I met this facilitator who took on this challenge, and I'm very grateful for that experience. I opened up with everything that I went through, that there is mental instability, that I'm dealing with suicidal depression for so many years. And what I can recall right now is the dosage that I inhaled was very, very small. Very, very small. So small that now I would think, did I take anything? Now that I know the dosage is a little better. And that dosage was perfectly enough to show me something beyond this structure and this mind of mine that grew to be very powerful, obviously in self-destruction. And that I love working with, I'm jumping ahead, I love working with small amounts of 5-MeO or Bufo, but that is not it. I always say this is not about the amount of the medicine, but amount of surrender that we offer ourselves. When I was so desperate and put everything in one basket, my life, my everything was there, and I said, let it be, thy will be done, so to speak. And I dove in, I completely surrendered. There was not even a thread of Magda resisting. And I said, if this is the way I will die, at least is pleasurable. I'm ready to go. And fortunately, this didn't happen. But what it left me with is pure wonder of, wow, this is amazing. But what really changed is in the month following that experience, I realized I didn't have one single thought about suicide. And that was when I crossed the line into life and living. And I had no doubt. At that point, I had no doubt that my struggles, my journey with suicide are over. And for the last 3 years, I haven't had one instance.
That's just so beautiful. So these dark thoughts of self-destruction were replaced by wonder, it sounds like.
Yes.
Yeah.
Wonder. Although in that wonder, I said, I know this.
Yeah.
Am I back to something that I'm actually running away and wants to find something different because I think this failed me? Because that was the feeling that I remembered in childhood. That was that wonder of being it, experiencing it myself as that energy. And it was golden. It was beautiful. I remember seeing myself as golden energy, and this was amazing experience that way.
Yeah, and it's kind of reflective of that paradoxical nature of the experience that many people describe of when they do release and surrender into the 5-MeO experience. It's both something novel and new, and it's also recognized as somehow I fundamentally know this, or I always knew it, yet somehow I forgot, but even in my forgetting I still knew it. So it's this, in non-dual states, one of the characteristics of this idea of the resolution of opposites, or just the balance of the paradoxical nature of being, where that both things can be accepted as true at the same time. And this is kind of one of those aspects of having forgotten something that you've always known, yet you've always known, yet still forgotten. and recognizing that. And I'm reminded in just a little bit, a slight way, with my own first full experience with 5-MeO, where for me, it wasn't a Hail Mary. It wasn't to put all my eggs in one basket, but it did come at a time in my life that I had just chosen to really radically change my life, and I had let go of a lot of things, and it was a very uncertain period for me. So for me, it wasn't that I was trying to, this wasn't like a last ditch effort to, okay, either give me purpose and give me light or I'm done. But it was, here I am, I'm 35 years old. I've just completely given up my life and I don't know what's coming next. So yeah, if this is going to take me and I'm never coming back, fine, I'm ready. So for me, that was the primer that allowed me to fully surrender. And for you, it was, look, I've been living with these thoughts for so long, and either this is going to change it or not. So here we go. And that's where I like to say that even though 5-MeO DMT is a very powerful molecule energetically, I also like to say, well, it is just a magic trick that in a way it doesn't really matter how much someone takes, because it's just if they can pull that sleight of hand on themselves so that they do fully give up and surrender. It doesn't matter if it's 2 milligrams or if it's 20 milligrams. Really doesn't matter, because you're ready in that moment to kind of pull the rug out from underneath yourself to have that experience. And that's why it works, right? Because it's about, is the person ready, either through tragedy and suffering or through wherever they are in life? Are they ready? And if they're ready, then the magic trick works. And if they're not ready, well, then there's resistance, or we'll get something else.
Then the medicine becomes the truth serum, and they know exactly what stops them. And it's wonderful that way. I say this medicine never does anybody wrong. You always will come up with such knowledge about yourself. It's just wonderful that way.
Yeah. And so in going to 5-MeO, had you had prior psychedelic experience to that? Or was this just, I've heard about this and I'm ready to say either give it to me or fuck it? Is that where you were at? Or was this, had you researched this? Had you looked into this? You decided, how did that decision come about for you?
I had a feeling that my time came to an end, and I wanted to make sure that I turned every single stone that presented to me itself before checking out. So I didn't do too much research. I didn't Google. It was said, well, this is what I do. Would you like to try? And I simply said, yes. When can I have the appointment? I didn't have any prior psychedelic experiences. In fact, I was very much against. This was something that bad people do, and this is doing drugs and all those things. Although I had prescription for insomnia and physical body pain from medical doctor for cannabis, and that even took me a long time before I started taking it the way it worked, and it took the pain away and helped me sleep 4 hours, which I was over the moon. Like 4 hours sleep for Magda was just amazing. So no prior experiencing at all, and I think going, so to speak, cold turkey into 5 experience was really good for me, really good. I would not want it any other way. I probably would be scared having prior experiences, to be honest.
Yeah. Well, this brings us to sort of an interesting question, and this is something that's coming up, as I'm going through and editing this book about facilitating 5-MeO and from all these different facilitators. And there are some people who are of the opinion where they say, I think it's best that people work up to 5-MeO DMT, that not be their first psychedelic experience. And this was not how you were introduced to 5-MeO DMT. And in the time that I was facilitating, I would say it probably maybe at least a third of the people that I facilitated for had 0% prior psychedelic experience at all. And even that I did find with people who did have prior psychedelic experience but not 5-MeO-DMT, that often those were the ones who thought they knew what they were getting into because they had prior psychedelic experience and learned within about 2 seconds that they didn't have a clue. So now, so we're kind of skipping ahead, but now as a facilitator yourself, what would be your position on this issue of work your way up to 5-MeO-DMT, or it's okay to start there?
You know, Martin, what a great question. And I hear it all the time. And sometimes other facilitators are calling me and saying, oh, I have this person, they say they're ready for 5, but I don't think they are ready. They need to work their way up. And I'm thinking, okay, this is not how I look at it. There are 2 things. And the most important, I think, is the readiness of the facilitator to take on someone that doesn't have any prior experiences. I am very new in facilitating. This is a year, actually, that I'm working with others, and 3 years that I'm working with myself with Bufo and 5-MeO. So I have very little experience, yet what really helped me working with people is really my background. I practice Chinese medicine and I have been prescribing medicinals for last 10 years and working very intimately with patients. And that gave me that comfort of sitting with someone for the first time. I actually love working with someone who never had any other experience, psychedelic experience. They are fresh, they are open, they have no preconceived ideas of how it could be, should be, or what they want out of it. They just fresh, just take me. I want to experience this. It's beautiful. That naivete, surrender, openness, whatever we want to call it, all of the above, is just the right combination for someone to have really amazing 5-MeO experience. This, in my opinion.
Yeah, and it worked that way for you. So we kind of jumped ahead a little bit, but let's go back now into after that first experience. You started working with it more, and I know we talked last time about how you went and sat with a number of different facilitators and exploring. So I was wondering if you could tell us about that process. So you had your first experience, brand new to the psychedelic experience in general. And I know that you have enriched your palette by this point, and maybe we didn't really talk about that last time, so maybe we could talk about that this time as well. But then that gave you a month of grace, which is also something that we've discussed is very common with 5-MeO, that like a month is a pretty standard time period where afterwards people just feel like, wow, I'm just walking on air. Because that sense of perfection that we've experienced, it really lands in the body, and the thought patterns change. People are more present. You know, it's going back to the child walking down the street and, oh, look at the flower, look at the trees, and oh my God, it's so beautiful, and I'm here, and I get to be in a body, and this is so fantastic that I'm infinite, but I'm here, and then all the wonderful things that are here in reality with me. I mean, it's this rebirth. It's such a beautiful thing that happens. But then often after a month, for some people, they're able to hold on to that. But for others, the old structures come back, the old habits come back, because for most people, these things don't unwind from just one experience. Right? It's an ongoing process of going deeper, releasing more, encountering other aspects of yourself. So how did that proceed for you after you realized it's been a month, I haven't thought of killing myself even once. What's going on here? What was the next step for Magda?
Oh, Magda is explorer and seeker, so I needed to find where I can have more experiences and go deeper, go as deep as I possibly could. I wasn't sure whether this state of mind will disappear and my old thoughts of suicide will come back. I wanted to harness the opportunity that I had right at that moment and go as deep as I could. And that's exactly what I did. It was COVID. It was borders were closed and so on and so forth. But I managed to fly to States to take a week course with Bufo and other psychedelics, and I simply became a psychonaut for about a year. I had many experiences, both with 5-MeO and every other psychedelic on the planet. I really wanted to understand my inner landscape. I want to know how I respond to every different psychedelic, what it takes, what is the journey with each one. And it was really beautiful because each psychedelic substance brought me to experiencing different part of myself, so to speak, and yet overall the same part that is Magda. So the learning and the combination was really spectacular. I went through something like 20 or 30 deep dives with all kinds of psychedelic. Half of this was 5-MeO or Bufo either. But within a very short period of time, about a year and a half. So it was really digging deep and diving deep. And that actually was necessary in my case. I would perhaps not recommend this to anybody else, but it was my way of becoming who I am today. It was absolutely necessary.
Yeah, and I think that that's important to point out that this kind of deep, intensive study, it's kind of like going to the ultimate graduate school, in a sense, is not necessarily for everyone at whatever point they are in their life, but kind of similar to your own story. Again, for me, after that first 5-MeO experience, I had prior psychedelic experiences. I'd been working with mushrooms and salvia divinorum for, a number of years before my first 5-MeO experience. But that started something that was like, I am diving all the way in now in a way that I never have before. And then the next year and a quarter, it was intensive work. Lots of 5-MeO, once every month or every 2 months, lots of ayahuasca, mushrooms, salvia divinorum. So probably every 2 weeks or so for that year and a quarter, I was doing some kind of psychedelic work. And what I found for me is each experience was building on the last one. It wasn't like, oh, well, there was that ayahuasca thing and that happened, and then there was that 5-MeO thing and that happened, and they're unrelated. No, each one was building, and it was cumulative, and so that period was extremely formative for me. But it's not what I do now because there's no need for that. But at the time, that was the restructuring, that was the energetic recalibration, and it sounds like you went through something similar by really giving yourself that opportunity to explore and dive in.
Absolutely. That was beautiful. And yes, from what you're saying, you had pretty much the same journey. And at that point, facilitation kind of brew in the back of my mind, but it was really doing work for myself, finding out who this being Magda is, how to be human, and God at the same time. And it is okay to combine the two somehow, and until I really got it. So yes, it was beautiful journey. And I had the privilege and opportunity to work with 8 different facilitators, observing their work, either as recipient or sitting in a circle or being a part of the training, which was really fantastic because I realized, well, I cannot be Martin, I cannot be Joe, I cannot be Karen, I have to be Magda. I need to find who is Magda as potential facilitator. And it took me a while to really sit comfortably with everything that I was born with and bring it to the surface as facilitator.
Yeah. Well,
it's a very unique journey.
Yeah. It's beautiful that you took the time to explore all of this and to sit with all these different facilitators, because it's another common thing with 5-MeO where people have their first experience, and then because it can be so beautiful and so overwhelming and just so life transforming that many people are like, I want to start serving this to people right away, right? That I want to share this experience. So there's a strong pull on a lot of people, but it sounds like you kind of did your due diligence of working on yourself and exploring and really learning yourself through that time period. Now, I wanted to ask you to share again a story that you talked about last time, and I'm not sure where this came in your experience in my recall of our previous conversation, but you had described the golden light and the spirit of Bufo and and I think that's probably what you were referencing earlier, but I was wondering if you could tell us again about that experience and where that fit in this time period of exploration.
Right. Oh, it was absolutely beautiful experience. You're right, and you remember that. That was where I really asked myself the question, do I want to step into facilitation? Is this for me, or is it my ego calling it? Because it is grant medicine. Everybody is like, oh, euphoric afterwards. And right. So am I looking with the right lens of eyes at this opportunity? Is it calling me, or am I calling it? So I sat with in a circle with facilitator, and I was very shy to ask that question, actually, but I did anyways. And it was amazing journey to the whole journey. It was very heavy dose, actually, and I remember feeling the medicine in my body, feeling it hitting my head very strongly, and to the point that my spirit moved out of my body, and what I saw, I looked at my head, and I saw all the electric network of central nervous system being lit beautifully, and I said, oh, that's amazing. Mm-hmm. As I'm having this thought of admiration, how this medicine works, and actually that I can see it, how it unfolds in the brain, I was sucked into my body and catapulted out of my body into a place where was amazing. Everything was made out of golden energy, and there were mountains on the horizon, and I said, oh, this is absolutely beautiful. I looked up, and there was this swirl of beautiful golden energy, and I knew that was love. And I knew, oh, Magda is not touching that. We're not melting today. Let's stay where we are. My ego said, no, let's stay. We are saving here. And as I looked, there was beautiful family people. They introduced themselves as ancestors, and this very humbling and overwhelming sense of peace and gratitude. And am I really seeing this? Am I really invited to experience this? This is just beautiful. And I looked to my left. There was this young man standing next to me, and I recognized immediately, and I said, Bufo, that's you. And he was dressed in ceremonial outfit with beautiful crown made of diamonds. And I looked at myself, and I had the same outfit. And I said, I didn't say anything. I just felt so much at that moment, and I had no idea what all those feelings were. My mind could not compute what was happening inside of me. I just simply returned back and shared a little bit with the facilitator, and she says, oh, that's big. Mm-hmm. But for me, it was, I have no idea if this is big or this is small. Let's wait and see.
Yeah.
And I sat with that experience for a really, really long time, until I saw Spirit of Bufo sitting in front of me on my couch one day when I had phone call conversation with my teacher. And I said, oh, Bufo is sitting in front of me. What does it mean? And in that moment, Martin, what came to me when I saw Bufo spirit, in human form, of course, in my vision during Bufo experience, he was looking at the family. He was looking at the ancestors, and I was sure he's not coming with me. This is not for me. But a few months or even a year later, when he sat in front of me on the sofa, And he told me in a brief second, he told me story. I was just saying goodbye to my family because I was coming with you.
Beautiful.
So, absolutely beautiful, very humbling, and you know, the saying that Spider-Man said, or his grandfather, with great power comes great responsibility, is a very scary place to be and live.
Yeah. 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 I get that. The feeling of can I live up to the responsibility? Yet also the temptation to tap into that power because it is powerful and to embody that yourself. And there's just so many elements of this recounting that are just so fascinating, just kind of from the phenomenological perspective of how you describe it as early in the experience that you kind of had a disembodied perspective on yourself. So you are literally detached and then looking back at yourself. But in order for this experience to unfold, you had to go back into the body and then from there emerge out, not as a detached consciousness, right? Which I think it kind of illustrates something that could be a very important phenomenological distinction in psychological experiences, that some people become detached and wander off and get lost versus, like, I have this saying where I say, look, there's infinite number of directions you can go out, but there's only one way in. There's only one way to the center. You have to go in. And so then your awareness is drawn into your body, and then that's what allows it to open up and unfold. And then in seeing this Spirit of Bufo in this kind of this story seeing of the ancestors, but then looking at this spirit and seeing how it is dressed, and then looking at yourself and realizing that it's the same, kind of just very, very palpably demonstrating the mirrored nature of reality. That what we experience is ourselves, that it's all a mirror in some sense. And it even reminds me when I was a graduate student writing about, for my master's dissertation, I was focusing on Lakota visionary experiences of the indigenous cultures of the Great Plains. And something that stood out to me that nobody writing about Lakota visionary experiences had ever really focused on, but in story after story that I was reading of these Lakotas going on vision quests and then seeing a spirit, and usually it's very similar to what you describe, where they would say, well, it was the spirit of the elk or the spirit of the bison or the spirit of the eagle, but it was a person, right? It wasn't the animal, it was a person. But then so many of these stories, they also say, and the person looked just like me or was dressed just like me. And it struck me that in all the people who were writing about Lakota culture and sharing these visionary stories, that no one ever really focused in on that. I was like, well, this is fascinating. Like, why is that? And that's part of my own budding sort of non-duality of this idea that actually we're only just experiencing ourselves in different guises and different forms. And this sort of reveals that the spirit of the animal is me. I am that. So we're not actually separate, but we're interacting through these separate guises in order to progress along in our journey of self-understanding and self-awareness. Mm-hmm. So then in deciding to facilitate, this is something that I think is very, very interesting about you, because I know that you mostly work with what I like to call the pure molecule, which some people on the toad side of the fence, they refer to as synthetic man-made garbage. It's not the real thing because it doesn't have the spirit of the toad in it. And so there's a lot of dismissiveness there. Whereas I've always felt this synthetic is perfectly fine. 5-MeO-DMT is 5-MeO-DMT. I don't really care where it comes from. It's the same molecule. But my point is to ask you about the idea of you are working with the Spirit of Bufo, but I know that you mostly serve the pure molecule. So talk to us a little bit about that, and also how you developed your own facilitation. So there's lots of aspects to that, so I'll return to some parts of the question. But let's just start with the working with the Spirit of Bufo, but actually using the pure molecule.
Sure. Um, Working with spirits, as I mentioned last time we spoke, it is my language. It is my way of communication.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know any other. So this is why I see things, I hear things, I perceive things, spirits and such. So this is my norm. Other people have their own guiding tools and such. So Spirit of Bufo, which is me. Uh, let's say it as it is. There's no secret. This is really developing a relationship with myself, with that self that I brought. You see, the subconscious mind has not only the wounded self and the dark self, has also the golden self and the beauty self,
Yes.
and the magical self, and all that we yet to discover. And I was able, in that vision that I had, that I shared, I was able to tap into that realm of beauty that lives inside of me, where Bufo lives, where ancestor lives, and Bufo is part of me. When people ask me to, I'm jumping ahead right now, people asking me to teach them how to facilitate, once they observe me, and oh, this is what I would love to do. I cannot teach them how to be themselves, but I can guide them how to develop that relationship, but they need to know how to be themselves and how to tap into those resources and energies. And I forgot your question again. Can you remind me?
Yeah. But first, I just want to touch on that last point that you just made, and I think that is so important. And so I just want to emphasize it, that when people see other people facilitating psychedelic medicines, whether it be toad or 5-MeO or ayahuasca or anything else, and there can be this idea of, oh, I see what you're doing, I want to do what you're doing. But I like that what you come back with is, well, look, I can help you find yourself in your own way. But in the psychedelic world, there's a lot of what I refer to as parroting. And this actually takes place within religion and spirituality in general. There's a lot of parroting. My teacher said this, so I said this. The tradition does this, so I do this. But there's a difference when you are exploring your own style, your own method, your own expression of yourself. And that, for me, is the ultimate teacher. It's like, no, don't try and be like this person or that person. Don't shake a rattle because this person does. Find what actually works for you. And within that, there ultimately is not a right or a wrong, because we're all different people. So if someone comes and says, well, I want to be Magda, that's the wrong approach.
That's already taken.
Yeah. It's like, no, you've got to be you. Yeah. Magda's already taken. So find your own way. And it's beautiful that you went to all these different teachers, went to all these different facilitators, but still kept your own integrity as yourself, that I'm going to do it my way. Yeah.
Yes. I tried. I tried to be someone else, and it just didn't work. Didn't work at all. And that's how it is with I guess every medicine. We need to find who we truly are and our relationship with that particular medicine. And you asked a question about working with 5-MeO, the molecule,
yes.
but working also with the spirit. Yes. Bufo doesn't mind being used. The organic substance is here for us, for humans. But as he told me, humans are developing sensitivities and allergies. So this goes both ways. If we want to preserve the toad, good for us. But toad wants to preserve humans as well. So this is a very, very pure and very dual relationship. So the only thing that Bufo asked me is to call him and be aware that he's around when I'm working with the pure molecule. And there is absolutely no difference. The result is the same. And because it is my language, as I said, of communication, I cannot imagine this being any other way, working with 5-MeO and not calling the spirit in. So it was just given that this is the way, this is the path.
Yeah. And it sounds like that is your access back into that space of the golden light of pure love.
Yes, absolutely it is. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And so for somebody else to try and do that, it's like, that's not your experience, right? That was Magda's experience. So that's the foundation of how she practices. So then in making that decision that you were going to share it with others, this will bring us into how you've developed your practice. And if you could tell us a little bit about, well, what does it mean to sit with somebody for you with 5-MeO and to serve them? And then we can get into how you became associated with the Samadhi Center. Yeah. So and if we can go through the steps, because this is also like part of the book project. And so this is it's always an interesting question of, well, when someone says, Magda, I'd like to do this, what are the steps? And then how does it actually proceed when you're directly working with someone in the medicine space?
So you basically want to know the steps as intake and interview into the whole thing. Okay. Yeah. Well, this is the most time-consuming aspect of being a facilitator, actually, the preps, and also post-medicine integration. So sitting with someone is a breeze comparing to, so to speak, comparing to other things that I personally feel very much responsible for. For me, this is not, oh, someone is coming to sit with me. Great. Where is the next person? I'm ready. This is my dedication. My personal journey taught me a lot about receiving and about giving. And when people are ready, when I decide to sit with someone, I don't want to cut corners. This is way too important to me, and I want to use the word sacred, although this is way overused word. So it's very important that I will do all my due diligence work in every step. So the intake is interview over Zoom interview with potential candidate for 5-MeO. I don't sign any legal documents. Actually, I was advised by a lawyer not to, because once you have legal documents signed, this is legal document that you're doing something that potentially is wrong to start with. So why do you have those legal documents signed? So I said, wait a minute. Although in Canada, a 5-MeO is not scheduled, so there is a way of working with this molecule with integrity, politically correct. Integrity. So I sent a list of things that the preparation work that needs to take place listed with a long list of SSRIs. I realized that just naming there are medications that should be avoided and are contraindicated, example SSRIs, I realized people are not really familiar with what it means. So I have a whole list, like 30, 40, and new ones are coming. So I'm trying to keep it updated. And I list all of them that are contraindicated. I had instance when someone looked at the list and said, oh, I'm good. I have only 2 out of the 30, so I can go. I said, no, you can't. You can't even have one. So there is a lot of education involved and holding hands and walking with the people along. And if I say no to someone, which does happen, my heart breaks. And especially if this is for medical reasons, they have to stop taking the meds, and this is really a process they need to go through and look into with a doctor and so on and so forth. My heart really breaks, but there's no way I would be taking chances for someone's life. And also my heart breaks because I know how it feels to be desperate for a change. And when you realize that Western meds did what they could do, and now you're ready for something new, but you are limited to your resources, and then you hear about 5-MeO. Yes, it is sweeping the globe in a big wave, and everybody's talking about 5-MeO, but there are people that are looking for solutions, and these are the people that I love to work with, and I don't mind holding hands and so to speak, babysitting them step by step. And sometimes even finding solutions is not my ever recommendation what to do with Western meds, but at least guiding them to you can talk with your doctor and see. So this is the most time-consuming step, and then I will invite them over to sit with me, and I like to start gently, and starting gently means two things, either starting with small dose of medicine or starting with a little stronger dose of medicine, and seeing, you see the personality. I feel where the resistance is very often before they take medicine, or I'm ready, and oh no, but that's okay, let's the medicine show you what is happening. So the first take will be that of more diagnostic way, where they are, and also to show them how powerful, strong the medicine is, how quickly the truth is coming out. Someone that was super excited, I was looking for this for so long, I'm finally here, I can't believe, I am so honored. And they genuinely are, until they take the first puff and they say, holy fuck, what is that? Oh, I think I'm resisting. Oh, I think this is too much. Oh, are you here? Right. So this can be a little traumatizing. So I am there with them all the way. Sometimes even when they fall unconscious, I know they hear me, and I will speak only what is necessary with minimal amount of words, giving them some directions. Surrender. You are love. You are safe. It's okay to die today. You will live after this. Just something. But it also takes knowing that person. So in the interview that I have with them, I want to feel them. I want to talk about the everyday thing, in not only the 5-MeO, but tell me a little bit about yourself. What brings you in? How are your children? What do you do for a living? Just having casual conversation. I'm really interested. And there always will be something they share with me that will stick with me as a reminder later on. I will remind them, do you remember you told me this and that? And it's like, coming back to senses, coming back to presence, and surrendering even deeper. So those conversations that we have beforehand are extremely, in my opinion, extremely important. And
it sounds like you give people the opportunity to have more than one hit of the medicine in the course of a session.
Yes, and really, I don't have any schedule. I don't have any agenda, how that should go, how many hits they will get. We go with the flow, and if they feel like having another one, yes. And sometimes I will say, it will be really good for you to have that one more hit, and the eyes will get big and said, really, you think so? And I feel the trepidation, I feel the anticipation, but I also feel the surrender, and I will match with my whole being that surrender that they have inside, because we are one, and I know they can feel me much better right now when they have the medicine in their system. So I will just go into full surrender. There is no agenda, nothing inside Magda except surrender, and if you want to go, we are ready, and let's do it. And that's how it is. Every session is different, every person is different, and there is no schedule for what I do, how I do. And sometimes I work in a shamanic way. I am trained shaman, so I see some energy shifting and moving in their chest or their belly, so I just simply scoop it. Sometimes it's a being, part of their psyche, and in in my language, it will present itself to me as a being. So I scoop it out, and the minute they are removed from the person, they simply dissolve into nothingness, because they cannot exist even in 3D. There's too much light for them, or too much of vibration for those beings of very low frequencies.
Yeah. Well, it really sounds like a practice of really genuinely and authentically being present with the people that you're working with, and the embodiment within yourself of presence, of surrender, of trust, that is what allows for this intimate level of work to take place. And this is also a place where, I like to commend people who practice that way, because I do see a lot in the 5-MeO world, and in other medicine circles as well, where the person running the show, the provider, is distracted and doing other things or interacting with other people, versus there's a sense of presence, of calm, authoritative presence, of just being with one person and being with them through every phase of that experience. And for me, I've written about and talked about that. For me, that's the difference between a provider. A provider is just someone who provides the experience, provides the medicine, and says, okay, have a great time, versus a practitioner is someone who is there to work with the person and to take that time and to take that devotion and focus. And as you say, that it's the breezy part, because it's actually fun to do that, and it's exciting and beautiful, because we feel the transformation taking place when you have that presence. And so it's a joy, but it's work, and to have that presence is just so important. And so it's just beautiful to hear how you describe that for yourself, and then how you work with that and work with individuals, and how each person is different. And that's, even when we're dealing with these medicines, every person's experience is still different. And it's,
absolutely.
Yeah,
absolutely. And we need to meet them where they are, with the full spectrum of psychology and everything else, and day-to-day life as they come to see us.
Yeah, I think it's really important to know what it means to be a human being to do this kind of work, because we are these multifaceted beings, and we have family life, we have relationships, we have jobs, we have our self-image, we have perhaps self-loathing, we have our inner judge and critic, and we have our relationship to God and relationship to reality, and all of it. We are complex beings. There's never a one-size-fits-all approach. So then, how did you become connected with the Samadhi Institute? How did that relationship develop, and how did you get invited in there, or did you invite yourself? Or we didn't really get into the details in our last conversation, so I'm curious.
That's true. We didn't talk about it at all, actually. There is never a plan for those things. Dan Schmidt and I met at an event that someone else held, and just as we were introducing ourselves, I think Dan mentioned, I'm running this pilot project on meditation with Iboga, and I said, that's interesting. I would love to participate. And that was it. And then as we exchanged few things, I said, would you think 5-MeO would fit? I so see 5-MeO being part of the whole experience, and then said, whoa, that really resonates with me. So basically, that's it. That's the whole story behind this, in my opinion, really revolutionary and beautiful and much needed way of experiencing meditation. And it's not really about meditation. It's not really about Iboga, and it's not about 5-MeO. It's about the combination that allows us to experience something that is beyond this human structure, this avatar that we are. And for some people, even long-time meditators, having experienced this full experience with Iboga and 5-MeO, brings them to a new realm of understanding meditation and understanding themselves. I cannot speak enough about how wonderful those two medicines are in this regard, in a way of meditation, where one is allowing us to feel grounded, and there is timelessness with iboga. You literally lose the sense of time. You lose the sense of sitting on cushion and being uncomfortable. All this disappears. So I could very easily meditate for 2-3 hours, and I was absolutely astonished. It's like, oh, this is possible for novice like me. I never meditated before, and here I am doing it for extended period of time. And then at the end is the 5-MeO experience. And I remember in one of the retreats, someone said, so why exactly did we meditate for 10 days, since we have 5-MeO experience? And poof, there it is, right? So this was really beautiful, and people are getting it. People get the value of 5-MeO and the whole experience. And I absolutely love working in groups. I love working. It is very intimidating for me. Let's not take it that easily, because I am there exposed with one by one coming to sit with me, and we work through everything. So it can be intimidating. But Martin, once I am in that environment of 5-MeO, there's no time for me. I am not Magda anymore. And what is happening, and I know you understand this scenario, but it's bigger than anything that we can really explain to people how it feels and what it is. There are no words to it. How do I know what dose each person needs, or it needs to be given? I don't know, but there is this intelligence, and I call it Bufo, that is inside of me. So my only expectations in the whole game of being provider or facilitator or supporting people is that Magda will step away and give room to something that she may not even understand. And that's okay. Full trust, and full surrender to that power. And miracles happen, magic happens. I work at the Samadhi Center. When I work, is about 7-8 people, and we have about 5 hours. So this is not a long time to allow every participant to have their full experience. So there is, in a way, a lack of time to allow them to unfold and feel it fully, but there's also beauty to it. So when I know they are coming back, I sense that they're starting to feel their body, I will offer them to sit up. Samadhi Center has beautiful windows, and there is nature outside, and nothing more potent than feeling that surrender and oneness with nature. Because for many people, it's rather difficult to feel oneness with other people. But nature offers us, animals, nature offers us that feeling that we belong, we are one. So I sit them up, and I will ask them just to look outside, and that's the moment when not only I, but everyone in the room can see what is happening inside this human being, and that is undescribable. The softness, the gentleness, the light that is pouring through their eyes and their face in this pure amazement of being part of this universe is absolutely priceless. And I would very often invite them to sit and watch the group. Also turn around and look at everyone individually, and some of them will feel that oneness with everyone, and some don't, and that's okay. This is part of the whole journey, part of the experience and self-discovery. I also give them a little sip of water, anything that is earthy, and bringing them back and bringing them back into the body. The water tastes fantastic after 5-MeO, and it's like, oh, right, I'm back. The ego says, I survived. It's amazing. Give me some water. So we do that, and then I will sit them gently with their back supported, so they can look, observe, and go through the rest of the process, because it's not done, and I have full awareness that they are not done yet. So it will take them another 20-30 minutes perhaps, but this is all part of the whole experience. We are outside of time and space. pace, and everyone's journey is my journey as well. So the person that just had journey observes someone else's journey when is open, when is perceiving, when the senses are so on available to feel and be more than just observer, but be part of the journey. So we have many journeys. I always tell them, your journey is my journey. So be ready to receive other people's journey and healing as your own.
Yeah, and it sounds like probably the 10 days of meditation with the Iboga helps prime people to really be present in that experience. And it is one of the interesting aspects of facilitating psychedelic medicines in a group context, is that one of the things that I always encourage among people who are in that kind of context is I would always say, well, really feel into everybody else's experience, even as you're just sitting and observing. And if you really pay attention, you will find that even if whatever that person is going through is very different than what your experience was, you will still be able to recognize yourself in that experience. And so there's this really rich learning opportunity as the narrow borders of the ego are softened, that we realize, oh, well, I had a beautiful, kind of cosmic orgasm, and this person is freaking out and screaming, but I can see that, I can feel that, and I can recognize those tendencies within myself, because we're all reflections of each other. And so that's part of what's special about doing group work. But for myself, I always wanted just to do one-on-one with people, but I do think that there is value in that, and getting to see, and that's a different way of learning about the self by going on these sort of group journeys and experiences. I'm curious if you find that with people who have gone through the 10-day meditation with Iboga, do they seem primed for their 5-MeO experience in a different way than people who are coming in for individual work? Do you feel there's something different there, or is it still, we never really know what we're going to get with each person? It's always different, and still seeing a wide variety of reactions and responses.
Very good question, Martin. So I work with very specific type of people. When someone calls me from a street and wants to come and sit with me, most likely it will be a no. And this is with full respect for their journey. It's just, I am not that type of facilitator. It may sound really bad what I said right now, but it is true. I am selective in who I invite into my space. So people that come to Samadhi Center are also of certain, I don't want to use the word quality, but it's the one that is coming in my limited vocabulary now. So there is quality of people that comes to Samadhi Center, and people that are seekers, people that have years of meditation practice, or are on a crossroads and did some inner work and looking to go deeper. So these are not, as Dan would call it, them not spiritual tourists. Mm-hmm. And that's very fitting. So after 10 days of meditation, everything is so open up and so right on the surface. And very little medicine will go a really long way for them. So this is that difference that I have noticed, that there is this full preparation. When I tell people that it's good if they take 7 days to prepare mentally, lower down use of electronics and so on, and change a little bit of diet, and 3 days is that I really ask people to be responsible for what they put in, and both for their minds and for their bodies. And when I get questioned, but why? That's a red flag for me. So people that come to Samadhi actually go through more than I ever ask people to sit with themselves and prepare. So work is much easier. There are some challenging and difficult cases, of course, but I have never met anybody that would say that was wrong for me, or I was not ready for this. it is with great humility that people accept their journey as it unfolded for them, and either this is beautiful, reaching samadhi and reaching non-dual experience and bliss, cosmic orgasm, or this is now I know what I have inside. Yeah. I need to work on, is amazing. One of the things that someone said after sitting with 5 is, now I know how much surrender I need to offer myself in meditation to reach that state that I reached with 5-MeO. What an amazing insight that is. And this is just a guiding tool. 5-MeO is not the liberation itself. It's a tool allowing us to go through the liberation if we choose so. But it's also showing us where our limitations are, where our beliefs are, where we believe that we are enough being small. And I like to say that we tend to think we are the obstacle when we feel it. How about we change that perspective and feel we are the 5-MeO experience itself, because this is who we truly are. Yeah. It's just flipping the consciousness, flipping the awareness, and looking at ourselves as the amazing, unlimited, infinite being of light and love that we truly are. So this is all that people are experiencing in the 5-MeO experience in Samadhi Center.
Yeah, well, it sounds nice that for you that you kind of get people who have been pre-screened, and obviously people who are there who are committing to a 10-day meditation retreat, they're dedicated. They want this. And I also love that, I think you'll probably agree with this, that it sounds like these are the responses that you're getting. And this is, like sometimes with people who are meditators, they say, oh, well, I don't need something like 5-MeO DMT. I'm really good at meditation. But what I have found is that you take even the most experienced meditator, and then they get their 5-MeO experience, and they're like, oh, that's the potential. I had no idea that was the potential. And so that it really does enrich the life of a meditator.
Absolutely, 100%. I can't say enough. I'm so in love with doing the work I'm doing, Martin. I think you can see and hear from my expressions that this is a game changer for humanity. I'm forever grateful for this opportunity, as I am for all my life, that brought me to this point of really sitting in that humbling place of provider, facilitator. I don't know the name, but yes, offering to work with people. I'm really amazed with every time I sit with people what comes out.
Yeah, well, that's beautiful. And I know you've been doing some other explorations, I think, deeper into Iboga. So just to kind of wrap up our conversation, I'm just curious where you feel you're going next in your own personal path, in your own enrichment, if you want to share anything about that, and then I'll let you go for today.
So yes, I am leaving for Africa in a couple of days, and yes, I'm going to spend some time with Witi people. Iboga invited me to do so, and I just simply said yes to it. It is a beautiful medicine. It is very humbling medicine. It is medicine where I really saw myself when I had flat dose. I really saw the whole truth, the ugliness of the whole thing, of the human mind, what we came. I will take back the word ugliness, the complexity and beauty of who we truly are. There are some aspects that really took me by surprise. My journeys with Bufo, with 5-MeO, are always uplifting, yet not easy, but nothing comparing to what I have seen and what I have experienced with Iboga. And having that personal experience, as you know, I'm working with the spirits, and if the spirit shows up and says, Magda, you going? Okay, I just requested a ticket ticket, and it showed up on my lap. So there we go. I am investigating, so to speak, this type of healing for myself. I am not thinking about being provider, but I didn't say yes to Bufo either, so we don't know.
Well, great. Well, I look forward to hearing more on the return trip. But just Magda, I just want to let you know that I really appreciate you making time for me again here on the podcast, and I appreciate our relationship and connection, and enjoy getting the opportunity to speak with you, and just love hearing about your own life, your struggles, your own growth, and what you're able to bring in service to others is quite beautiful. So thank you for all of that.
Thank you so much, Martin. These are such sweet and kind words. And thank you for inviting me to participate in your book. I'm really looking forward to learn about other people and their facilitation ways. There's always something to learn and something to bring back to my own practice. Why not? And thank you for having me second time on the podcast, and making that room and understanding what this spirit went through after the first. It was quite something, and I am so very grateful that it happened that way, and that you found time for me today again. Thank you.
Yeah, well, I'm glad we could do it. All right, well, thank you so much, Magda.
All right, thank you. Have a lovely day.
Okay, you too.